this in the middle of doing this in the middle of the presentation. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Delivered my hour, and I got a standing ovation. And that's how I entered the professional speaking world. I got introduced to the keynote speaker, and she said, join the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. So I learned a whole lot from this little dynamic that I thought was, I was nervous. It was my first time in front of a large audience. I'd done lots of workshops, up to maybe 60 people in them, and small little intimate therapy. So I've learned a lot along the way, especially from the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, with whom I became a member. So I'll be sharing some of what I've gleaned over the years. I'm just getting my PowerPoint ready for you. I'm also been, for the last 6 years, a TEDx speaker coach. So I've had lots of knowledge, and as I hope I modeled, you prepare as best you can, and then errors sometimes happen. I'm going to motor through the content today because 20 darling people sent questions, and I do want to make sure that I have time to attend to questions that people, specifics that people want to know about. Okay, so, and Manisha, we do have a session guide for people that you sent ahead of time. I hope people have either printed it off or have it in front of their computer. And yes, this session, Kaylee, will go to 12:55. We will end right at 12:55. Sometimes Manisha can stay on, we'll see. But I'm going to motor through and then hopefully leave 10 to 15 minutes for addressing questions. So let's get rolling here. I want you to notice I opened with a story. That's a really helpful way oftentimes to give context to your presentation, is to open with a story. I'm going to ask you to write in the chat box. Number one, if you're planning to do or have been doing a talk or a keynote, or you're more interested in workshop training, or you can put a number of numbers in if you're interested in multiple options. These are delivery styles. If you're teaching, instructing, whether it's a classroom presentation, I'm assuming a student, and whether you're doing these presentations in person or online. So number one, number two, that's all you need to put in the chat box for me so that I can have some information about to whom I am speaking. So let's see, we've got Alyssa Bolton. Hello, Alyssa. So nice to have you here. 4 and 6 classroom, online, 2, 5 presentations to councils and funding groups. It's Rachel. Wow. 5 in person. Okay. Crystal, 4 and 5. So we're kind of all over the map here in some ways. 1, 5, and 6. Wow. Well, you only got 1, 5. Oh, wait, but not the second one, 5. Okay. All right, 3, 5, 6. Lots of variety. All right. So if you don't cover them thoroughly, and it's impossible in this few minutes to do that, I'm certainly available by email. It's in the session guide, my email, and I'll also provide it to you at the end of our time together. So let's roll with the content, and hopefully we attend to, you've covered all these numbers, so I didn't manage to narrow it down. So here we go. So I'm going to ask you to participate again, and that is we're going to very briefly talk about the big ineffective pieces that we can do, and then the effective behaviors that we can do to enhance our presentation. So in the chat box, just put one word that would represent for you, oh my goodness, I gotta sit through this. What's that one word that comes to mind that you would describe, a descriptor or a behavior of the speaker? Reading, yes. Oh, showing anxiety. Tone, sort of like lectury, I would imagine. Anxiety, reading, fake, okay, fake. Sometimes we have to fake it to make it, but I just want to temper that. Passion. I've never seen anybody passionate about what they're talking about that was ineffective, quite frankly. But maybe, Diamond, you're thinking about something else. Yes, flat, no voice modulation or emotion involved. Emotionless, yeah, sort of talking from the head. Might as well read a book. Very repetitive, yes, okay. Or yes, some ers are natural, make it a little actually more authentic, but if it's primarily stuttering and stammering, unless the person actually has an impediment, does stutter. I know a speaker or two that stutters and makes that clear at the beginning. Just reading from the PowerPoint or page, yes, that's called death by PowerPoint. Meant by fake was disingenuous. Yes, okay, disingenuous. Thank you. I appreciate the clarity, Alyssa. Okay, all right. Preparation. Okay, I'm not quite understanding what that means, Manisha, how that's ineffective. All right, so you as a group are already on track for effective presentations. So let's move to the positive. Even with my counseling practice, I try to weave in and always end my sessions with something positive. I don't want to end the session if it's on a downer. So what are some words that describe an effective, engaging presenter? What are they doing that has you saying, I'm engaged? You could have used engaged instead of effective. Eye contact, which is tricky when you're online and you got all these screens to look at. I'm looking at OBS, I'm looking at PowerPoint, I'm looking at Zoom, and I'm keeping my eye open on the session guide that you have been given. Okay, so connecting, eye contact, passionate and lively, relatable. Got eye contact again. Okay, are there any more? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'll move on. So basically, we don't want somebody on the platform often that is arrogant and hasn't obviously prepared. Just it's I, and it's not relatable. It isn't engaging because it's got nothing to do with you. Nor do we want somebody working out their emotional problems, which is where there's this space between where we're authentic and we have information and we're there in service of the audience. You prepare and then you become present to the audience. I'm trying to be very present to you and keep an eye on the chat box. So there's like the chat box, the Zoom, the OBS, the PowerPoint, my session guide. And what's important is you. So if I'm all consumed in my own emotions, I'm not there for you. And if I'm all think I'm wonderful and you're going to adore me, well, that'd be nice. I'm not going to be there for you in that situation either. So in your session guide, you've got all this information. If you've got it in front of you, I hope you're scribbling about some of the ideas that we're sharing. And we want to ask ourselves, how can the audience identify with me, or I identify with the audience? And what's my credibility with this audience? Sometimes it's important to say, especially if you're being paid, that's a whole nother dynamic we can talk about, is I may need to say, thank you, no, I'm not a good fit for your audience. I just don't have the credibility, the experience, and it would be difficult for me to relate and connect and them to me. You want to have these people in harmony with you. And yes, you are the orchestrator of the presentation. And you want to leave spaces for people to leave their own notes, particularly in training and in workshops. Keynote, you want them at least to be nodding their heads and maybe going, ooh, ah, maybe clapping, maybe laughing, maybe yelling out yes or no. It's a very different beast to do a talk or keynote than to do a workshop, where you want most voices heard by a number of other voices. And you want to ask yourself, why you? What is your credibility? What is your experience? What is your knowledge base? What is your personality? What is your interest in doing two things? The topic you're talking about, why you on this topic to this audience? There's a very good question to write down. Did I ask yourself, what is the value of my message to this audience? That's another way to write it. So you'll see in your session guide, what's in it for them to listen to you. What's the information? How are you going to deliver it, that it's relatable? And this day and age, information, content is available on the internet. How are you going to embellish it so that you add value to the information? So what's it in it for them to listen? To be there even. Time is valuable. And you also want to name your objectives. What do you want when you're finished speaking? And you start at the end, what you would like is the result, and you back up and think about these points. What do you want your audience to know and remember? If you're a student, you've probably, in some ways, been told by the instructor what information you need to impart. So if you narrow it down, what is it that you want them to know? And even more important, to remember. In most presentations, unless it's a workshop, if it's just a talk, you're very fortunate if people remember one soundbite, one piece of information. You want to ask yourself, is what I'm delivering sticky, memorable, and repeatable? So I'll say, do your best, let go the rest, to help with stress management. So my intention is that people walk away and say, oh, George, are you doing your best and letting go the rest? Yeah, of course you are. So maybe somebody at the workplace is saying that to somebody else, or they're saying it to themselves. So what do you want your audience to know and to remember? And what do you want them to feel? Sometimes we want people to feel scared. I want you to think about the young woman I've forgotten her name right this minute, about global warming. She wants us to get a little scared about not paying attention to planet Earth. And sometimes you want to uplift people, having them smiling and feeling joyful. And sometimes you want people feeling angry to take some action. Politicians are very good at that, to get you to vote. How do you want them to feel? And feelings push, motivate people to do. What do you want them to do? And so usually on TED Talks and other effective presentations, there is a call to action. So I invite you to take a bubble bath or some other means to take care of your body before you take it to bed. Or another way to end it to get them to do. If you remember nothing else that I said, please give consideration before you make a PowerPoint presentation and ask if props might be more effective. And you want to ask, is the whole objective to entertain? Now, believe it or not, I have been hired once in a while to entertain, often at a women's conference or a volunteer appreciation. Would you just do something that's uplifting? And I have actually used the odd magic trick that's very easy to do, but typically it will be story-based as how I add the entertainment. Now, you want to, after you decide what your objectives are, your topic, how it's relating to your audience, what you want them to know, to feel, to do, what's in it for them, you want to collect content that supports your message. Now, I'm going to breeze through these options. I hope you have a pen, pencil, a writing tool available. There's 20 options I'm giving here of content that you can use to support your points. You want to know what you're doing there, what you want to leave them with, and how you're going to deliver the content. I'll give you a structure for the content in a little bit after I go through this menu of content. So please get your pen or pencil ready, and away we go. I'm going to try to breeze through it because there's many, many ways, and even more than this 20, to wow your audience with a variety of options. Away we go. Here we go, menu of optional content. So facts, statistics, research. You might want to open with an incredible fact. Did you know that 1 out of 4 Canadians are struggling with their mental health? Right. And I combined a statistic with a question. You might want to ask a question. If you do ask a question and have people put their hand up, please do not say how many of you. Please use this line. Put your hand up if you know somebody in your circle that's living with cancer. Somebody in your circle is living with cancer. That's a question. Put your hand up if you know somebody who's struggling with either anxiety or depression. You see, my wheelhouse is in the mental health world. And then if you do the question thing, you report to your audience how many hands went up, roughly. Why? Because you're going to have the first row and the second row turning their heads because they can't see the hands behind them and they're curious. And you don't ask a question, I guess, again, unless it's relevant. What's in it for them to know this statistic? So, for instance, the mental health piece, hands go up and you say, oh, it looks like about a quarter of the room is putting their hand up that they're affected by mental health. That is in alignment with the research. Then you might give the statistic for the research after the question. So these couple options are ways to open your presentation. Notice I'd open mine with a story. So definitions. So take a look and see if you can find a definition that goes along with your presentation. So you can open it. And please, if you use a definition, say the definition is. The definition of a presentation is a means of communication which can be adapted to various speaking situations. If you're going to use a slide deck and you put up a slide, please read the text so that the audience isn't having to read while you're talking. The brain cannot read at the same time as listening. So you'll see me doing that repeatedly, okay? Photos. I include a number of photos in this presentation, but I might not use photos. Photos are the main content typically of effective slide decks. And I use the word slide decks because not everybody uses PowerPoint. Some people use something called Prezi, and then there's Keynote on the Apple machines. Movies. I was asked to do a presentation at a women's conference, and they called it the Dorothy Factor. We're doing a women's conference, and we want everybody to walk away with the Dorothy Factor. Can you do something? And I absolutely did. I made a storybook, and I bought a little Toto stuffed dog, and I created this whole presentation talking about how people have a heart and they've got a brain. Yeah, anyway, the Tin Man. It was actually a delightful event, I think in Claresholm, Alberta. You can use videos, and often the best videos, you don't want to be showing a video, just a short little clip if you want to make a point. This is you can either use videos or you can use GIFs. And GIFs are pronounced GIFs or GIFs, doesn't matter. You can pronounce it either way. This is my favorite little GIF off of GIF. You just type in Giphy, Giffy, and you could, here's the caveat with somebody asked about copyright. You want to make sure that you are choosing people that aren't famous because you could get yourself in trouble, but many people make on Giphy.com. And I have some GIFs up there that I made from video. Take a video and it shortens it and makes it into a GIF. That one of me running was a GIF I made of myself. People share their GIFs and you can download people's that are sharing for the public. You could base it on a book. So this is my most recent book. I really want it to sell because it's got my heart and soul in it. And so I take the book and it is the content, the main content of the workshop, right? And I have a workbook that goes along with it, and that provides the session guide. Props. Oh my goodness. If I did not have the slide deck, sometimes I choose to use, props. So my cat and dog puppet, they're really good for relationships. I've got my darling baby for talking about self-esteem or other subjects. I've got these glasses from looking at life from a different perspective. I've got my rubber band for resilience. Oh, you can't stretch too far, you'll snap, crack, or break. Yeah, and celebration. Yes. So think about, do I love using props? Personal stories. Oh, gee, has Esmeralda, the youngest Nobel Prize winner, ever used her story to make good in the world, to do good, to speak good with her story. You can do case studies if you're, especially for the workplace, then use examples and case studies. You can use, actually, this is more repetition and restatement is often very good in workshops, about every 20 minutes to stop and do a little review. I'll give you a little tip if you're doing workshops, because a number of you said you're doing workshops. It's my favorite little participation process. I can feel the energy going down in the room. It's more difficult on Zoom. I much prefer shorter presentations on Zoom. However, I can still do it on Zoom or other platforms online. And that is, you stop and you say, in five words, or you can say 7 words, doesn't matter. 5 words, not more, not less. What's the best point that we've made so far? Oh, let's do that right now. Okay. Everybody, in the chat box, please write best idea you've heard so far. We'll just take 30 seconds, a minute to see how that works. Repetition and restatement. It's reinforcing learning. It's saying, you came here. I'm doing what I can do to impart information. What is it you're absorbing? So let me just see. I'm going to look right now in the chat box, see how we're doing. Yeah, storytelling when appropriate. Okay, what's the difference? Video. Hey, sorry. Okay, facts. Use case studies. Okay, Giphy. Access the energy of the room. Yeah, again, accessing the energy of the room. Difficult online, and I also you want to be prepared for sometimes the energy being crappy if you end up accidentally in front of the wrong audience. Sorry about that, but I've been there before, and you just have to get some self-talk ready. And I've got some tricks in the introduction to check how the room's going to respond to you. Well, respond to anybody. But you can email me about that one if you want to know more. Okay, all right, thank you. So number 13, activities and exercises. And there's lots of tutorials online about how to increase tutorials on Zoom and other platforms. Zoom has quite a few apps that you can use. I can't use them with OBS. And why do I use OBS? Because I don't like disappearing in the little box. I want to have a relationship with you. So there are Prezi and OBS, and there's some other apps that can help you be more present to your audience than Zoom puts you in a small little box. So there's some trade-offs that you have to make, but Zoom's got polls you can take, games you can make, you can do drawing on Zoom, where I can't do this in this platform. You can use analogies. She is as fickle as a butterfly, or you can use a metaphor. She has the heart of a butterfly. You can use a poem. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways, said Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Okay, you can make rhymes. This poor attempt at me making a rhyme to stay within the content of this presentation. PowerPoint's way took him away to a heavenly place where he'll stay. But if you're great with rhymes and even rapping, like I know a speaker that John in Edmonton. Oh, and he raps. He speaks to a lot of youth. You got to think about your audience. How do they relate? You can use music or song lyrics. And Facebook, by the way, Facebook has a whole library of music that's copyright free. You just need to Google it. And if you can make up your own songs, fantastic. And comparison, apples and oranges, introverts to extroverts, the oil industry to the wind and alternative industry. You can do comparisons. You can add fun and humor. And if you've got that skill, that's great. One of the advantages of using a slide deck is that you can include some humorous images that might help if you're not naturally silly and funny. Sometimes I like moving into silly and funny. And you can also brainstorm content with other people, or just brainstorm in your head. And this day and age, we can brainstorm using ChatGPT. What other contents what are the variety of contents that I can add to a presentation on the geography of Alberta, for example? Think creatively. Allow yourself to just let ideas pop into your head. And if you see something on Amazon or in a store, or I like going to the dollar store sometimes when I'm thinking about my presentation, I'll be out shopping and I'll just allow myself to, that might be fun. And then you structure your content. You've got your content and you structure it. And this is where you're going to make a session guide. Call it a handout. I like the term session guide. I think it says more about the intention of me putting in the effort to take my content and say, okay, well, how many points can I put in this 45 minutes presentation? And of those points, I'm going to organize the content that I have. I've got lots of stories. I've got props. I've got poems. So you take and do I need to access some more to fit into this message that I'm going to give? So I structure it, and I don't do any slide decks or decide on props at this point. I'm just structuring my content, and I usually do it in a Word document. I'm putting the main points and I'm fleshing them out. And I'll show you a structure in a minute. So you structure your content. Your intro, what are you going to do for your intro? Make it as engaging as possible. And your conclusion. Are you going to give something away, or are you going to remind them of the important points, the takeaways? You can do a call of action. And then hopefully your main points, your body, is providing some solutions to some problems. So I could, if we had time, I'd go through each point that I'm making here and talk about the problem if you didn't know what your objective is, if you are struggling with your content, and then what you're doing is you're providing the solutions. So it's time for a little break. One of the essences of an engaging presentation is some variety, so keep people on their toes and get engaged. So Tony Robbins' TED Talk, the average speed of speech for you and me, the average person, is between 120 words and 140 words, right? About 120 to 140 words a minute. So I want you to, in the chat box, just door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. Which is your guess? Tony Robbins, how fast does he speak in a presentation? This was timed by somebody who took his TED Talk and, I don't know how they did it, but they timed it out. Door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? Okay, most of the guesses are 1 or 2. All right, ready? Drum roll. You see that? Now I bet you're curious. If you're curious, you're really curious, then how about you go Google in TED Talk, Tony Robbins, and just listen to the speed. Even though he's very fast in his talking, he's quite articulate, and so you don't miss words. At least I don't. So time is very, very important when you're creating a presentation. And people say, well, can you do it? And can you give us a presentation in 20 minutes or 30 minutes? And I say, you tell me how much time I have, and I will give you what I can in the most coherent manner that I can. My most challenging presentation I have ever done was at the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers in Halifax, in front of over 200 of my professional speaking colleagues. I was given 3 minutes to make a point that would be helpful to speakers. And I must have practiced that 50 times. It takes more work to give a shorter presentation. Every single word counts. Now, as a speaker coach to TEDx speakers, they are either given 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and the most is 20. And with the 5-minute and 10-minute TED Talks, every single word is taken a look at. And the script is over and over again, practiced until we have it honed. Well, when you're doing a workshop or something like what I'm doing here that we want very practical, I am following a structure, but I'm relying on my experience and knowledge as I'm talking. I haven't memorized all of these lines. I couldn't possibly do that every month and continue to do what I am. If I'm doing a keynote and I'm being paid $5,000 to deliver a keynote for 50 minutes, sometimes keynotes are anywhere from a half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour, and I've never seen one longer than an hour and 15. Typically, they are memorized and practiced and practiced. Indeed, before I, for years, delivered a keynote, I would deliver it for 3 to 4 audiences, sometimes just my friends, for free, until I would put it out to a paid client event. So we've done all this preparation, and then we want to deliver with thought and passion. We want to be passionate about our subject, if at all possible. Sometimes you're stuck, especially if you're a student, in having to deliver what you don't have any passion about, and I don't care, but you have to do it. So you could do some structure, but if you can find any piece of it that you're excited about, then show that. And did I practice? Yes, I did practice. I didn't do the whole 45 minutes, but I have gone through my slide deck. I've gone through my session guide, and I've highlighted some points I wanted to make sure that I covered. Okay, so a practice is all the way from going back when you've got everything in place and just checking it, speaking out loud a little bit, to every single word coming out smoothly. They say in TED, you practice until it doesn't feel like you're practicing. Otherwise, it feels a little stilted. So effectively energize. That's what I hope I have modeled for you. I want to effectively energize by engage audience attention with a variety visuals and sounds and perspectives. Never embarrass your audience. Never ask somebody to put them up. Put your hand up if you have cancer, for example. Put your hand up if cancer has affected your life. Something that would be unembarrassing for an audience to participate in. Educate, but avoid using teaching language. And what do I mean about that? If you walk on and say, today I'm going to teach you, there aren't, regrettably, a number of people that have had disastrous school experiences. And so you don't want to risk triggering them. So people want to be treated as adults with their own knowledge. So just be careful about that. Effectively relate all content to your points. What's the point? If you go off track, whoa, you gotta be careful. What's the point of what you're saying to the audience? What's it about them? Give confidence, skills, and information. I think encouragement and confidence building is helpful, whatever topic. Include fun and surprises. I hope I've included a few surprises for you. I've got one coming up for you. Zest them, that is energize them. How do you energize them? You model some energy yourself. Yeah, and enhance your content. They can find it online. They can find content online. So I remember my marketing friend saying, Patricia, you think that people hire you because you've got a master's degree in psychology? And I said, oh, of course. And she said, no, it's because of your personality. And it's because you love your audience and you invite them to have fun, and you also encourage them. And it was such a nice compliment. Thank you, Jeanette. Okay, questions. I'm going to run through these quickly. There were 20 and I narrowed them down. Okay, these were all about fear speaking. Your audience wants you there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been asked. That is, external. If you're a student, sometimes you're stuck. I want you to have some fear. I had a little bit of fear. How am I going to do this today? Have I got everything in place? A little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety says you care. So that's fine. And if you do not apologize, people will not know you're afraid. Delivering is the time that you let go. You let it go. You've done all your preparation. So if I have a typo error or something here, I might go, oops, typo error, but I don't get into apologizing. They don't know what you forget. I see this over and over again in TEDx talks when we're practicing and we do rehearsals, is they'll say the wrong word or whatever. You just stop and say, and look at somebody. Oh, that's another great little tip, is look at somebody in your audience that's nodding their head. Don't look at the ones like this. No. Okay. I've got more tips for you. Somebody asked, where is there Toastmaster clubs available? Globally, everywhere. And I wrote down Toastmasters International. With Tascowan has one Toastmasters club. Red Deer, surprised me, only has 2 Toastmaster clubs. Edmonton has 35 Toastmaster clubs. Calgary has 76 Toastmaster clubs. And online, there are many clubs. And Toastmasters, for those of you that might not know, Toastmasters is a leadership and beginning speaker skills program. It's very economical and they're very supportive. It's a wonderful lab. I was a Toastmaster for 15 years. The Canadian Association of Professional Speakers is about making money by speaking. That's all we have in common, all the way from doctors to comedians to nutritionists to sales trainers. So it's a different kettle of fish, and Toastmasters is a really good place for people who have fear of speaking. You'll get lovely supportive feedback. If you can, visit 1 or 2 or 3 clubs that resonate with you. Have you used AI to build a slide deck that supports your presentation? Well, I actually used IA to tidy up some of the grammar in this presentation. I like playing around with Chat GPT, but there are some advanced programs that can make video and all kinds of images for you. I love the creative process of weaving in my own photos, and I also use Canva for photos. So I hope that answered that question. How do we make a point form presentation? If you are talking about point form in PowerPoint or Keynote, it's built in. I would rather make a click and have an individual slide, so I'm keeping my audience's attention on this question. You will see once in a while, I will use PowerPoint where there's a list of words, like I did with the Energize, but I wanted it because of you gotta have a reason. The PowerPoint or the using bullet points in PowerPoint is dreadfully overused. If you're wanting to know about making on a card point, you put your point, your support, what you're going to use as a support, and how people can apply it. So I'm not sure about that question. Well, we're gonna turn the recording off soon. So if there's something that can be clarified about that question, we can do that then. Do you memorize your presentation script? I think I covered that. How can we give important details when sharing intense, heavy, or emotional content? If it is so emotional that you are having the audience witness you as therapy, that's not okay. Sort that out somewhere else. We want contained, emotionally regulated emotion. And if it's going to trigger the audience, then you want to ask yourself, is it worth triggering my audience? Can I give the information in some other way? The other way to do it is to prepare people and to say, if this triggers you, please look after yourself, and feel free to leave or whatever. This is maybe some material that will trigger you. And I can remember Linda Edgecombe doing something brilliantly. She showed the fires in Kelowna, the video, and some of it was hard to watch. And when the short video was over, you don't use a lot of video because we can just go online and watch video. Try to keep, if you're using video, less than about 3 or 4 minutes. Anyway, when it ended, she turned to the audience and she said, anybody need a tissue? And she ran around with a box of tissues, and everybody started to laugh, even the ones that were, crying. So people in Kelowna had been through an awful lot during those fires. I hope that answered your question. How can we use notes properly when speaking so it doesn't look like we're reading? Well, if you're reading, you're reading. But if you're concerned you're not going to remember a proper statistic, I won't mind writing down a statistic or these numbers that I went to Toastmasters International and I just wrote down the numbers, but I didn't want to use up brain power remembering numbers. And it shows that you're prepared. But you don't want to be reading word for word. You know enough, you're experienced enough, know your points, and have some kind of guide. And when I'm doing workshops, I just walk around, sometimes picking this up now and then, and say, oh, we're on to point number 4. Aren't we doing well? And I take a glance and away we go. How do we deal with image photo copyright concerns? Well, there's all kinds of websites, Splash and Canva. Canva has a free version and there's got all kinds of photos, and they're copyright. Now there are sometimes caveats, so you have to read the caveats and take a look at your own photos, what you have that you can use. And sometimes I have choreographed falling downstairs. I've choreographed falling off a bicycle. Like me running there, I wasn't running. I made the video fast using the fast speed on iMovie, so what is it you want to demonstrate? Taking a photograph of putting toast on a plate because I have a beautiful story about toast. How can we respond to a question that we don't know the answer? I don't know the answer. That's right, I don't know the answer, but you guess what? If you just send me an email, I have somebody that I think knows the answer. Or I think I know where to get the answer. It's okay not to know. There's lots I don't know, and I'm 77. Lots. Okay, a bonus for you, and then we're going to open up questions from you now. So I have a resource that I made that I couldn't cover all the material. So some more ideas about how to keep your audience engaged and energized is in this document, and 10 tips for adding terrific humor. Just easy little thing, like even, oh, darling. A prop can add humor. Craft your engaging story. I've done workshops, 2-hour workshops on how to craft a story. And there's some elements that are crucial to making it engaging. You don't want a whole lot of boring stories. Okay. And how to manage nerves, some extra tips other than I gave you. So all you need to do is, and some resources, some books I particularly like and are useful. Okay, so all you need to do is email me. My email is in the session guide, but it is also here if you can write it down. And we've got about 5 minutes left. So Manisha, if you would turn the recording off, and if anybody